Now, today, I want to start by reading you from Bṛhat Parāśara Hora with the third chapter and the text 2 to 5, because this also defines the zodiac and it brings in some other interesting points about the three spheres, and then I'm going to attempt to show you a presentation about it. Okay, so here we go. From Bṛhat Parāśara Hora 3:2, it starts like this: Shrinu Vipra Pravakshami Bhagrahanam Paristitam, which means listen. Listen, you learned one. I'm going to tell you about the positions of the Bṛha and the Graha, of the stars and the planets. Akashe yani drishanti jyotir bimban yanekasha. In the sky, so Parāśara begins by saying, in the sky, we see many jyotibimba, many dots of light. Then he says, Teshu nakshatra sangyani, graha sangyani kanichit. All those dots of light, some of them are stars, nakshatra. This is very, very important to realize this, that nakshatra are stars, literally stars. Yeah, so in the sky we see many dots of light, jyotibimba. Some of them are stars, nakshatra. That's what nakshatras are, stars. And graha sangyani kanichit. Some of them are planets, some of them are stars, right? What's the difference? Tani nakshatra namani sthira sthanani yani vai. Those which stay in their places, fixed in their places, those are called stars, right? So this is Parāśara explaining the sky. In the sky you see many dots of light, and of those lights, some of them are called stars and some of them are called planets. The ones that are called planets are the ones that move, and the ones that are called stars are the ones that stay in their place. Gachanto bhani grunati satatam ye tute graha. Those stars which always move as if they had consciousness are called planets, graha. Now, you should notice that when Parāśara is talking about the lights in the sky, he doesn't make any mention of Rāśi. He's talking about the jyotibimba, the dots of light in the sky. He doesn't talk about Rāśi. He talks about planets and nakshatras. Bhachakrasya nagashvamsa ashvinyadi samahvayaha. The celestial wheel, the Bhachakra, it has integral portions that are called Ashvini and so on. So now he's talking about the portions, how you apportion this wheel of stars. It has these internal portions, integral portions, Angshas. And it's like a wheel being led by a horse. So this is a play on words because Ashvini, Ashva means horse. So he's saying that this is the leading nakshatra is Ashvini, and it's pulling the Bhachakra like horses pull a wheel. When horses pull a wheel, it spins around. So this is an indication that the fixed stars, the nakshatras, he previously said they don't move. Didn't he? He just said that they were sthiti. What did he say? Sthira sthana. They stay in their place. That's why they're called nakshatras. But then now he's saying that they move. So what's he talking about? They move in relation to something else, all as a unit. All these 27 amshas of the Bhachakra move together as a unit, being pulled by a horse. Now you may say, well, why does he say Ashvini is first? Because that's the time, that gives you a hint that this is the time that he's speaking. Clearly this is Parāśara Muni. We don't think that he's ignorant of Vedanga Jyotish. We don't think that he's ignorant of Rig Veda and Atharva Veda and Yajur Veda, which lists Kritika as the first one. He must be intentionally saying Ashvini is first, because at the time when he's speaking, Ashvini is where the ascending equinox was, the northerly equinox. Now, here's an interesting kicker. Up to this point, he has not said anything about Rāśi. He's talking about Jyotibimba, the dots of light in the sky, and he said they're made of nakshatras and planets. He hasn't said anything about Rāśi, so you may think, well, he's just counting the Rāśi or something. But now he says Rāśi, and he says that they're separate. He says, Tad Dvadasha Vibhagas Tu Tulya Meshadi Sangyakaha. You see, he doesn't talk about Rashi as being stars. He says there's another way to divide the Bācakra, but, he uses the word but too. This same space, this tulya, tat tulya, this same space, but it can also be divided into 12. That's a different way of dividing it. And those are the Rashis starting with Mesha, Aries. So the word two is very important. It shows that when you put two into a statement, it's saying but. But means it's different than the other thing. Here's what I said. I said, I like ice cream and I like cookies, but I'm not going to eat it. It means the thing that comes after I say but means that it's, even though the previous thing has been said, this is something else. So after explaining the nakshatras and the grahas as the dots of light in the sky, he says, but there's another way. You don't have to just divide the sky into 27 amshas. You can also divide it into 12 vipagas. Now think about the difference between the word amsha and vipaga. Amsha means an integral portion. You know about amshas. Every astrologer knows about amshas because you have navamshas, dashamshas, dwadashamshas. Those are integral portions of the Rashi. They're not separate things. They don't have any separate existence. They're integral portions. The nakshatras are called amshas. Parāśara calls them amshas of the Bācakra. But when he talks about Rashis, he calls them vibhag. The word vibhag means a distinct differentiation. They're not really part. They're not part of the stars. They're another way of dividing that same space, but they're different. It's distinct from that. They are distinct. The Rashis are distinct from the nakshatras. So he's given us, now here's where I'm going to try to use this monitor in the back. He's given us a picture that there are different spheres. And some of them are, and there's stars in one sphere, there's planets in another sphere, and then there's signs in another sphere. I made a presentation to illustrate this for you. I hope it's going to work and not get whited out and all that stuff. Let's see. If not, just roll with me. Pretend that it's working. So here we go. The three spheres. The first sphere is deep space. There are three spheres that you have to think about in astrology for your astrological astronomy, for your observational astronomy. You have to think about the sphere of deep space. Then you have to think about a closer sphere called local space. Thank you, sweetie. My daughter just gave me a blue piece of paper, which is blue, like the local space. Then inside of the local space, you have to think of another sphere, which is Earth. These are the three spheres of astrology. Okay, these three spheres are famous because they're also called Trilok, three worlds, three realms. Bur, Bhuva, Swa. The Bu is the Earth realm. Bhuva is the local space. And Swa, or Swarga, is the deep space. Now let me show you what these three are in more detail. Local space, it's created by the space in which the planets move, especially the sun and moon. And let me show you how they move. Hopefully you can see this, and it's not too white. But the sun moves around once. The sun moves a little bit. The moon has moved all the way around once. The distance that the sun has moved demarks one Rashi. And then we'll do the same thing again. As the moon goes around in its second orbit, the distance that the sun covers in that demarks the second Rashi. And so this keeps happening again and again. So every time this moon gets here, it's another demarker. Boom, boom, boom. Aquarius, and then Pisces, and then you come back to the start. That's why we have 12 Rashis, and that's why they're equal size. That's how these divisions are created. So this local space is the space of the solar system. It's where the planets are, and the way that the planets, especially the sun and the moon, the kings of the planets, the way that they move in relationship to the earth defines this local space into 12 sections. Now let's talk about this deep space. Deep space is this one with 27 amshas, 27 integral parts. Now why are there 27? It's the same thing It's the same movement of the sun and moon, except now the moon is primary. When we were defining the Rashis, the sun was primary. So the sun was moving this much, so that was called the first rāśi. Then it moved this much, that was the second rāśi. And the moon was the quick marker that was showing you where to make these divisions. When you go to the nakshatras, it's the moon space, it's the night sky, it's when you can see the stars at night. The moon will then be the main marker, and the sun will be the one that goes around fast. How does the sun go around fast? This is a sunrise to a sunset and another sunrise. So the area of space that the moon covers as the sun goes around the earth once, by the earth spinning, creating a day and night, that area of space constitutes one amsha of the Bṛhat chakra, one nakshatra section. And the next day the sun goes around again. The amount of space that the moon would cover on that day is the next division of that deep space. And you do that again and 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 again, and you get 27 divisions. Now, where we get to our tricky part, now you know why the inner space has 12 divisions, and you know why the outer space has 27. The outer space drifts in relation to the inner space. Now let me explain why. First of all, the first thing is that the earth spins. And it spins around this thing called an axis, the middle part of its spin. That's simple. The next thing, though, is that this axis is not right in the middle. It's tilted. The plane of the sun is flat, and then there's the moon, and then there's the earth. The earth is not perpendicular to the plane of the sun. It's on tilt. Now what that does is this causes the sun to drift north and south of the equator. So you can just imagine, if you have the sun going around like this, when the sun is over here, it's closer to the north. When the sun is over here, it's closer to the south pole. And when it's in these two spots in between, then it's on the equator, it's at the equinox. So this is why there appears to be a northerly southerly movement of the sun, because the earth is tilted. This tilt of the sun creates the solstices and the equinoxes. And these are the markers of the solstices and equinoxes. Where the sun comes closest to the northern point, that's going to be the northern solstice. And where it's furthest from the northern point, that's going to be the southern solstice. And these 2 points in between, these are the equinoxes. So these, remember what like we learned from Surya Siddhanta, these Vishuvats and Ayanas, these solstices and equinoxes, they constitute the anchor of the zodiac. But the orientation of this slowly rotates also. The earth spins around and around and around and around on this axis like this, but this axis also goes like this. So but this moves very slowly. So this thing is going to move around very slowly. And when that moves very slowly, it causes these points to drift around also. So watch what happens. As it very slowly moves. This is where it was 5,000 years ago. The northerly equinox was here in Kritika 5,000 years ago. But as this axis of the earth rotates, the equinoxes rotate with it. So 2,000 years ago, the northerly equinox was in Ashvini, and the summer solstice was in Pushya. But before, at the beginning of Kali Yuga, 5,000 years ago, the summer solstice was in Magha, and the northerly equinox was in Kritika. And this movement keeps going and going and going. So it's kept on going since that time 2,000 years ago when everybody wrote their books about astrology. And now it's come to this point where the equinox is in Uttara Bhadrapada. So you see, what changes is how the stars align with the signs. That's what changes. These points are always aligned with the zodiac. That's why it's called the anchor, or the nabha, or the sutra. This whole wheel moves, and it moves in relation to these stars. So what doesn't change is how the signs align with the equinox. That's permanent. But what does change is how the equinoxes, and therefore the zodiac, aligns with the stars. Okay? Now let's also take a look at what this earth thing is in the middle. The Earth is this inner part, and the Earth actually has its horizon. And that horizon is what is the basis, the anchor point for the 12 houses. So if you want to know what the Earth is in astrology, first of all, it is the Zodiac, because it's 1/3 of the partnership that creates the Zodiac. It's the sun and the moon going around the Earth, which makes the Zodiac, and which makes the 27 divisions of the Bṛhat Chakra, far away, deep space. And then what it really is the 12 houses, because they're based on the horizon. The Earth is spinning all the time, right? So every day, it's been, but actually we're standing on the Earth, so it doesn't look like the Earth is spinning. It looks like everything else is spinning around us. Once a day, the whole circle of the whole Zodiac and all of this moves around us. But so that was my presentation. I hope that explains a couple of things to you. Okay, so Sanjay Rath and other famous astrologers, they have said on videos and whatnot that we have to map the tropical zodiac to the nakshatras, right? So there's no problem there. I have no objection. The tropical zodiac has to be mapped to the nakshatras. That map is called Ainamsha. If you want to say that that the Rashis should now go into the nakshatras and become part of the nakshatras, then that's not a map. That's an obliteration of the Rashis. You've obliterated the Rashis and subsumed them. You've subsumed them into the nakshatras. Some people say, like Sanjay Rath, he says that the tropical zodiac is for predicting weather and scheduling agricultural affairs, and it's not for personal interpretation, that the Sidereal Rashis are for that. Well, I don't know why. He suggests that it's because the stars are where the devas live, so they're spiritual, and that's how you can get spiritual information from the deep space. But sarvam kalvidam brahman, everything is spiritual. The deep space is not more spiritual than your garage. Your garage is just as spiritual as deep space, and in fact, your garage is more relevant and pertinent to your life than deep space because you live there. So the local space is actually more relevant to personal prediction. And he says that you have to map them to the nakshatras because they're more spiritual. The nakshatras are more spiritual. They'll give you divine information. But I say no. Everything is spiritual. And the spirituality which is close to me is more relevant. And by the way, most of the astrology readings that people do are not spiritual. Astrology is not about spirituality. Yoga is about spirituality. Shastra Vichar is about spirituality. Studying Shastra, practicing sadhana is about spirituality. Astrology is about your karma. It's about karma, not spirituality. So you don't have to go to some deep space thing to get information about your karma. Karma's right here, right now. But besides my personal opinion on this, the Bṛhat Parāśara Hora Shastra 3.6, right, where we stopped reading, it says the direct opposite. It doesn't say that you can only use the nakshatras for predictions, and that the tropical things have to be mapped to the nakshatras before you can use them for predictions. The Bṛhat Parāśara Hora Shastra says that predictive astrology is founded upon the Udaya Lagna Rāśi. So it's not founded on the nakshatras, it's founded on Udaya Lagna. And the Udaya, the ascendant, nobody can argue that the ascendant can be sidereal. The ascendant is inherently a tropical phenomenon because it's about the position of the sun in relationship to the horizon of the earth. So that's why you need Ainamsha also, because just to calculate the ascendant, you have to do it in reference to tropical things. Some people say, and he also says, the tropical zodiac is seasonal zodiac, and it's hemisphere specific. So it's just for weather and stuff, and it's only seasonal. It's irrelevant. The only thing that is hemisphere specific about the tropical zodiac is the words used to name the equinoxes. The name for the ascending equinox, when the sun comes over the equator, the name for that is vernal equinox, which means a spring equinox. That is Northern Hemisphere specific. That name is Northern Hemisphere specific. And summer solstice is a Northern Hemisphere specific name. Similarly, the autumnal equinox and the winter solstice, those are all hemisphere specific names. But folks, those are just names. Just change the names. You see, when does the day begin? A day begins when the sun comes over the horizon. When does the year begin? The year begins when the sun comes over the horizon. What horizon? The solar system's horizon, the equinox point, the equator of the Earth. When it comes over the horizon, that begins a day for the Devas. And it begins a year for us on Earth. And that's the point of Aries, where the zodiac, which measures the year according to Surya Siddhanta, is to be started from the point where the sun comes over the horizon of the Earth. And the years, in the sense of a year, that horizon is the equator. These are not northern hemisphere specific things. It doesn't matter if you live in the northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. The sun on March 21st, by our calendar, comes north of the equator. And it doesn't matter if you live in Australia or in Alaska. It's on June 21st that the sun gets to its most northern point. And it doesn't matter where you live, if you live in Vermont or if you live in Paraguay. It's on the autumnal equinox. Just change the names. Call it the descending equinox, the southern solstice, the ascending equinox, and the northern solstice. And then you won't have all this smoke and mirrors or junk misunderstanding that these things are hemisphere specific. It's not hemisphere specific. The Rashis, the 12 zodiac signs, are not created by weather or seasons. The tropical, the sidereal, both, they're created by three things. They're created by the ruler, the element, and the mode. A sign has a ruler, an element, and a mode. That's what gives the sign its symbolic character, not what the weather is like at that time. So if you want to know more about that, take my course 102, my astrology course 102. It's all about, see that? I remembered to plug one of my courses this time. These elements and the modes, they are only explainable by reference to the equinoxes and solstices. They're not explainable by a sidereal zodiac. So if you were interested in that topic, I explore it fully in my signs course. So that's it, really. I got two more things to tell you guys. There's a lot of bad explanations about nakshatras that are out there. So, because a lot of the way people explain nakshatras is as if they were integral part of Rashis. They are not an integral part of Rashis. Rashis are vibhag. Nakshatras are amsha. Nakshatras are an integral part of the stars, and Rashis are vibhag. They're different from the stars. And so people explain nakshatras as if they have the energy of so-and-so sign, and they have this ruler because this pada is this navamsha, and blah, blah, blah. So that's a hard thing to get over, because everybody's way of understanding the nakshatras is based on this thing that the way that they're related to these Rashis, but they're not related to the Rashis permanently. They're temporarily related to the Rashis. So, but I have a very simple way to understand the nakshatras that works great. You just need to know the deva of the nakshatra, and you need to know the type, whether it's bitter or soft or whatever. If you know the type of that, and then you just need to know the name, what the name means, and what the constellation is supposed to look like, and you can know everything about the nakshatra. You don't need to go into this stuff like, well, this is in Aries, so it has Mars energy, but it's ruled by the Ketu, because Ketu has a Vimshotri Dasha, so it's got the Ketu energy mixing with the Mars energy. You don't have to do any of that junk. And that's just going to mess you up when you try to grasp this concept that the nakshatras and the Rashis aren't permanently aligned. But if you don't grasp this concept, you haven't graduated from 101 of astronomy. And if you haven't graduated from 101 of astronomy, you can't do calculations, and you cannot do interpretations if you can't do calculations. And if you think I'm being a fuddy-duddy, just read what the great astrologers have said. Prashna Mark starts off by saying, if you can't do good calculations, you have no right to be an astrologer. So that's one thing I wanted to tell you, to beware of the bad nakshatra interpretations. And the other thing I wanted to say is, on the first Facebook Live thing that we did, I got a lot of comments. I really was happy. I got a lot of comments. I put it on Facebook too. I got a lot of comments. Oh, look, here it is. Here comes a comment just right onto this point. So some of the comments were like, tropical sucks. I could never be a Leo. And then the next comment will come up, yeah, sidereal sucks. I could never be a Cancer. So, you should observe all the comments that are made. Some of the comments are going to be people saying, tropical is way more accurate. I couldn't be my sidereal sign. And somebody else is going to come up with the same exact comment going in the opposite direction, right? So there's two things that should come to your mind if you observe this. One thing is, either astrology is just a load of crap, and you could just make it's whatever anybody wants it to be. But I don't think that's true, because I know it's not true. So the other option, that's the only other option that's left for us, is that our personal amateur observations about what's accurate and what's not accurate are not important for deciding the fundamentals of astrology. The fundamental principles of astrology are to be decided and defined on a scientific basis, logical basis, which is in congruence with the masters who have defined it in previous ages, not by what we think works better for us. Now, in the long run, though, you do want pratyaksha. You do want direct experience, not just shabda. You don't just want somebody to tell you what the truth is. You want to experience it as being true. So here's my advice. Take my courses. No, seriously, you have to study. You have to study. You have to clearly understand what you're evaluating before you can give an evaluation. Before your evaluation has some weight to it, you have to clearly understand what you're evaluating. So you need to know Astrology 101 in my course structure, which is what the planets really represent, 102, what the signs really represent. If you don't really know what the signs represent, then how can you say that you could never be this particular sign? Then, even much more complicated than that, you have to have a system of knowing how to look at more than one thing at a time. Because in astrology, there's many, many things at once in a chart. So you have to have a well-defined system of evaluation that you will apply uniformly to a reasonably large sample. Yeah? If you have the well-defined system of how to evaluate a chart, then apply it. And your practice at evaluating charts, then try this. Try to use a tropical system with the nakshatras staying sidereal. And stick with the fundamental basics of what the planets represent, what the signs. Get that clear first, otherwise your system is going to be bunk. If you've learned what the signs mean by trial and error of making sidereal reading work, then you're going to think that the traits of Leo actually belong to the traits of Cancer, or something along those lines. Okay? So, I think that's everything I wanted to say. Now let me see what you guys have to say. Let me see if I can read this without my glasses. Chaitamsha wants to say, tell me the settings in J Hora you use for predictive astrology and mundane astrology. So you want to know the settings of how to make software work. You can't make all the software work, but you can make, there's at least two that I know of that will work in this manner. Jagannath Hora will. There you have to select the option to use no Ayanamsha for the Rashis. They'll give you this option. That's what differentiates them from the other softwares. And then you select what Ayanamsha you want for your Nakshatras. And if you want to ask me which Ayanamsha I like, I just use Lahiri because that's how I started. And I've never really felt the need to change it. All of the Ayanamshas are within 3 or 4 degrees, except for some of the really strange ones. So it doesn't make too much of a difference compared to this huge issue of whether or not the signs are 23 and 24 degrees off. So first get these signs right, and you'll see this Ayanamsha thing is not that much of a big deal. But so whatever, if you want to make yourself work, the other one that works is Kala, and you just do the same settings. You pick what Ayanamsha you want, and then you just make sure you tick the box that says don't use this on the Rashis. And then also, if you want to know my personal settings, then I just make sure that you also use whole sign houses. That's also, I am a big fan of whole sign houses. Anyway, I'll thank you all for coming. And Let's see how, when I listen back to it, to see how loud my daughter was in the background. And I'll see if this worked. I wonder if it worked. Okay, everyone. So, you can comment on this too, and even after it's done. And who knows, I might do a third version, but hopefully I'm going to stop doing this because I need to move on and do some other things that are important. I want to finish my Ashwini video, my Bharani video, and I have a brand new birth chart interpretation system that is almost online. It's almost ready to go. And actually, that would be a good thing for you to do if you want to test your tropicals thing, is to get that reading. It's probably going to go, I'm probably going to release it in about 2 weeks to a month. There's some more polishing that it needs to be done. But it's a very scientific system for how to evaluate the charts. Okay, my brothers and sisters, friends, acquaintances, and best friends, Radhe Sham, thank you so much. See you next time.